So hello everyone, I am Mayuresh Inamdar and I am accompanied by Harshal Zadav, and today we'll be taking a session on Arduino. So in Arduino we'll be covering the hardware basics, what actually a microcontroller is, and we'll be also teaching you how to program Arduino using the Arduino IDE, and then we'll be covering Internet of Things. So in that we'll be starting with what actually Internet is, what are the different protocols of Internet of Things, and what do you mean by an IoT platform. So these are the things that we'll be covering in today's session. So let's get started. So before diving into what actually Arduino programming or Arduino hardware is, we have to understand what is a microcontroller. So let us divide this word into two small parts, that is a micro and a controller. So as we all know what micro means. Micro means small things. And there are three major reasons why microcontroller has micro in it. So first and most basic reason is that the IC of any microcontroller is very small. The parts, the logic gates or the transistors that are there present inside the IC are very small. So that's why the name micro. And the second reason is that the power or the amount of current that it takes is in microamperes. And the third and the most important reason for it being called as micro is that to perform any controlling task, it takes the time it takes is in microseconds. So that's why the name suggests micro. And the second part of the word is controller. So in any embedded system or any electrical circuit, if there is any controlling action that has to be taken place, then you use a microcontroller. So if I have to give a good example, let's take an example of a washing machine. So in a washing machine, you have to control the amount of water that is present in the machine, amount of soap that is present in the dispenser, and what is the speed with which the motor should spin in terms of a front load or a top load machine. So these all are controlling actions. So in this particular application, you can use a microcontroller. So if I have to give you an exact definition of what actually a microcontroller is, then it is a integrated circuit device, that is an IC, which is used for controlling other portions in an embedded system or an electronic system. So in an embedded system there are various types of electronic components present, and to control those particular devices, those particular components, you require a microcontroller. So this is what is basically the definition of a microcontroller. So now let's discuss, like, for any device there are a few characteristics, there are a few features which you can count on. Like if these features are present in any device, it can be called as a microcontroller. So for microcontroller, these are a few features or characteristics that has to be there. First is computational power. So any device that has a certain amount of computational power can be called as a microcontroller. Like there are other features as well, but computational power plays a very important role. So what do you mean by computational power? It basically means that your device should be able to perform a certain mathematical operations, arithmetical operations, uh, or it should be able to perform a certain actions. Like it suppose if I tell the device to perform a certain steps, then it should be able to perform those steps without any difficulty. So this is what computational power means. So the second important feature that any device should have, that is, it should have memory. So basically, the device should be able to store things. So in memory, there are two kinds of memories, that is RAM and ROM. So everybody knows about these two terms. So let's just briefly, I'll just explain briefly that what these two terms mean. So RAM stands for random access memory. So RAM is basically a volatile type of memory, which means it can store your files that you are working on temporarily. So if we take the example of microcontroller, all the variables that you have declared in a code, all the sensor readings that all the readings that you collect from the sensors are stored in your current RAM. The next type of memory is ROM, that is read-only memory. So read-only memory, that is ROM, is basically a non-volatile type of memory, which means you can store your files permanently. So basically, whenever you are burning your code from your computer to Arduino, so that code needs to be there forever, right? Unless you reboot your system. So that code is stored in your ROM. So the second point that we covered was that the device should have memory to store variables and programs. Next feature is that it should have input and output pins. So you need to connect external devices to your microcontroller, right? To control them. You need sensors, actuators. So how will you connect these external devices to your microcontroller is through input and output pins. So this is an important feature that you need in any device to be called as a microcontroller. Then next thing is ADC and timers. So ADC stands for analog to digital converter. So in reality, like in real life applications, most of the sensors that are present are analog in nature. But your microcontroller only understands in voltage levels 0 to 5, that is digital, either 0 or 1. So to convert those analog readings into digital values, we need ADC. So that's why the microcontroller should have a ADC. Next is serial communication. So whatever program you are doing, you are programming you are like you are writing your code on your computer, right? You are on your or on your laptop, but you have to burn that code onto your microcontroller. Or other example can be you have interfaced a sensor. So how is the sensor readings being communicated from your microcontroller, like from your sensor to microcontroller? So this happens by serial communication. So serial communication, there are basically channels. So and bit by bit data is transferred, like there are bits, right? Zeros and ones. So bit by bit data is transferred through those wires serially. So that is called as serial communication. So this was the basic overview of microcontroller. Just to add here, let us understand the basic difference between a microcontroller and a microprocessor. Let us try to explain this with an example. So in your laptops or mobile phones, you have microprocessors like AMD, Intel, or in mobile phones you have Snapdragon. So these are different microprocessors that you have. So the speciality about microprocessor is that it has more computational power. It can have more large amount of memory, large amount of RAM. So it has more computational power. So wherever the application requires you to have a very complex algorithms running, uh, or it should have a operating system. So in such cases, you use microprocessors. But in control, like in applications where you just need to have control over things, like in automobile, you have different sensors. So you just need to alert the driver that your headlight is not on or seat belt is not on. So these are just control parameters, right? So in such cases, microcontrollers can be used. So this was the basic difference between a controller and a processor. So let's move on. So now the whole session after this will be about Arduino. So let us understand why most of the people use Arduino. And the first and most important reason being it is cheap. So it is manufactured in China, and due to mass manufacturing, the hardware cost is very cheap. Second point being it is open source, so there is no licensing fees involved. That's why this adds one more reason that why it is cheap, that it is open source. So Arduino has its own IDE from which you can program the hardware device. So basically, Arduino has made an interface in such a way that uh, you don't need to, like, there used to be a programming language called as assembly language. So where you have to write each and every which port to burn the code on, then which pin to select. All these things were very difficult in that kind of programming language. But with Arduino IDE coming up, all these things are made very simple. So next point is easy interface. Like I just mentioned, to select the port, to select which kind of board we have, then you can select inbuilt libraries you can download. So all this is made very easy. So next point being easy interface. Next is easy communication with PC. So you just have to plug in your Arduino board to your laptop, write a program for it, and burn the code serially into your Arduino. So it is very easy communication with the PC. Next is easy debugging. So Arduino IDE, the debugging, like if you write a code, there will be hundreds of errors in that code, right? Like no code will run in first try perfectly. So with any interface, it is very essential, it is very important to have good debugging tools. So Arduino provides you with those tools. And the last point being, you can have multiple boards and multiple library integration. So if I want to use Arduino Uno or Nano or Node MCU, all the boards are available in Arduino IDE and it is very easy to program them. So these are the major reasons that why so many people use Arduino. So let us move on. So these are a few boards that Arduino has, Arduino manufactures, and most common being Arduino Uno. There is Arduino Zero, Arduino Mini, Arduino Nano. So for where you want to make compact projects, you can use Arduino Nano. There is also this particular controller, LilyPad. So this is their smallest microcontroller, and like you can actually stitch this particular microcontroller to your clothes. So these are the different models that they have produced. So yeah, let us talk about what actually is Arduino. So as the definition suggests, it is a microcontroller board which has a on-board power supply, on-board input and output pins. It has a USB port to communicate with the PC and a Atmel microcontroller chip which can be programmed using an Arduino IDE. So this was the basic definition. So let us understand each and every word what was mentioned here. So Arduino board is made by the Atmel company. So this is the main Atmel chip. So this is basically the whole microcontroller and this is the whole development board. So this development board consists of multiple parts. So let us try to understand what are the major components present in the Arduino board. So first of all, this is a DC jack. So from here it gets power supply. So as you can see, you can give 7 to 12 volts. But the operating voltage of the IC is just 5 volts. That's why you need a voltage regulator. So purpose of this voltage regulator is to like basically step down this 12 volts into 5 volts for all the system to work. Then there is this crystal. So this is a 16 megahertz crystal. This can be also called as the heart of the microcontroller. Next is USB port. So to have communication between your personal computer and microcontroller, you insert a USB cable into this port and you can have serial communication. Then let us talk about different kinds of pins that are present in microcontroller. So there are basically 6 analog pins and 14 digital pins, and different digital pins have different purposes. So pin number 2, from pin number 2 to pin number 7 are dedicated for PWM, that is pulse width modulation. We will know in about like next slides what actually PWM stands for. Then there is interrupt pins. Pin 2 and pin 3 are interrupt pins. So interrupt basically stands for most priority task. So you can allocate those particular sensor to interrupt pins. That task will be completed by the microcontroller on the first priority. Then there is pin 10 to pin 13 are used for SPI. So SPI is basically a serial communication protocol. Serial peripheral interface. It is, the full form stands for serial peripheral interface. So it is a master slave kind of a configuration where your microcontroller will act as a master and your sensors or other microcontrollers will act as a slave. So once you connect, if you want to connect multiple microcontrollers to this particular microcontrollers, so those multiple microcontrollers will act as slave and their data will be transferred to this microcontroller through connections with these pins, and this will act as a master. So it is a old kind of example that they give, that there used to be masters and slaves. So that ideology they have taken here. Then on left side of your board there are analog pins, and you have two grounds, one 5-volt output pin, one 3.3 output pin, and a reset pin. So this is all about the hardware of the microcontroller. These are the essential pins that you need to know. And so while connecting any sensors, you need to have a data sheet of this particular microcontroller, and you can easily make the connections. So this was all about the hardware part. Now let's get started with some software part. So to program any microcontroller, you need to have basic understanding of C or C++. Okay, so let's start with basics understanding of C, and the most basic concept is data type. So suppose there is an example that you need to add two numbers, uh, but there is one integer type of number and there is a decimal type of number. So how will the computer know that which type of number you are referring to, right? So you need to predefine the data type of that particular number. So what is data type? What kind of data? Like exactly the name suggests, data, that is what is, if it is numbers, characters, or some other kind of data. And what is the type of the data? You have to declare in before. So to take any kind of reading from any kind of sensor, you need to have variables, and these variables need to be defined. And how do you define these variables is by defining the data type of that variable. So if I have an integer value, if any sensor is going to give an integer value, I will write int. If the sensor is going to provide a character, I will write char. So this is the data type. This is the syntax of that data type. Then float stands for decimal values. Then there are some derived kind of data types. There is array, pointer, and function. So array basically stands for, like suppose you need a sequential data, that the sequence of the numbers matters to you. Like suppose there are some characters A, B, C, D, and you want A to be in 0th position, B to be in first position, C to be in second position. So if you need such type of data, then you use arrays. So these are some derived data types. Then there are user defined data types like structure. So while programming Arduino, you will use structures a lot. Like because there are multiple types of sensors. Like one sensor will give, suppose there is a temperature sensor, it will give integer values. There is suppose soil sensor, it will give float values. Then there is some boolean, suppose there is an actuator like motor on or off, which is a boolean value, right? So there are different data types. So what structure does is it stores different kinds of data types in a single packet, and that packet can be transferred from one place to another using some kind of Wi-Fi module or Bluetooth module. So that's why structure is a very important part in C programming. So next comes operators. So operators are basically normal mathematical operators, and they are also used in programming. So I'll quickly go through one by one. That is, first is assignment operator. So if you have to assign any number to any variable, you use the equal to sign, which is called as the assignment operator. Next comes like A equals to B. Suppose you want to assign value 3 to A, then you will say A equal to 3. Then next is addition operator. So you have two numbers, you have to add those numbers, then you use a plus sign to do addition. Same goes for subtraction. So subtraction, if you want to subtract two numbers, you will use the minus sign. If you want to multiply two numbers, you will use the asterisk symbol, that is multiplication sign. Then you will use backward slash to use to denote the division, and you will use percentage to define modulo. So modulo is basically same like division, just that it gives you the remainder. So if remainder is 0, modulo sign will return you 0 value, and division it gives the quotient, basically what is the output after dividing the number. So that gives the division. So going forward, control statements. So control statements are very essential in terms of microcontroller programming. So let us start with sequential statements. So whatever code you are writing, so there are sequential statements wherein if you write a few statements in a particular order, they will be executed in that particular order itself, and each and every line will be executed. Okay. Then there is branching statements, conditional and unconditional. So conditional statements, if else, these are some examples. Now suppose there is an example where you have a temperature sensor built in your room, and there is a fan, and you want to say that if like if the temperature sensor gives a reading above 30 degrees Celsius, then only you have to turn on the fan. So these are the kind of applications where conditional statements are used. Like if a particular condition is satisfied, then only perform the particular task. If that doesn't happen, then there is else statement. You write else, do not turn the fan on. So these are the kind of applications where conditional statements are used. So let us move on to loops. So loops also plays a very important role. So in any programming language you are learning, there will be loops, and there are major two types of loops, that is a while loop and a for loop, and I'll just explain you the difference between these two. So first of all, let us understand what is the basic need of loops. So whenever you want to do a particular task repeatedly, you use loops, and there are two kinds of loops, while loop and for loop. So there can be only two conditions, that you know that how many times you want to run the particular thing. Like suppose I want to spin a fan, and I know that I want to spin this fan for 20 times, then I'll use a for loop. So when you know from beginning that you want to do a particular task repeatedly for a particular number of times, then you use a for loop. And if the case is that you don't know, but you know that I want the fan to be spinning till the temperature of the room reduces up to 20 degrees Celsius. So there is a particular condition which needs to be true, and then till then the loop should be running. So in such cases we use while loop. So this was all about loops. Let's move on. Yeah, so the next important part is functions. So in any embedded system or any programming language, functions plays a very important role. It is better to write your code in terms of functions. Like if I'm building a health monitoring system, suppose, so there'll be multiple sensors, right? And multiple sensors will have multiple functionalities. So your code becomes very large, and it becomes very difficult to debug that code. So what you do is you make customized functions for each and every application. So functions allow structuring the program in segment of codes to perform individual tasks. So it is very self-explanatory, and this is basically the syntax of the function. So first you have to give the data type of the function, then you have to give a name of the function, and then the statements. Statements means what is the basic functionality of that function. So this was the basic syntax of how to declare a function. So yeah, let us now get started with Arduino IDE. Now that we know about all the programming basics and hardware basics, let's get started with Arduino IDE. So to program the controller, we need to install a software called as Arduino IDE. So all the programming that we do for the microcontroller is done through Arduino IDE. So let's get a quick tour of how Arduino IDE looks. So this is the basic screen that you'll get once you open the Arduino IDE. This white screen is called as a sketch, and here you write all your code. So there are two basic things in a sketch. One is void setup and a loop. So whatever pin configurations you have to set are written in setup, and whatever code that you have to, whatever the functionalities that you have that you want to do repeatedly, you write it in loop. So This is the basic sketch that you have. Then there is this black window where all the errors, or if the code is run successfully, everything is displayed here once you run a code. Now let us quickly see in what all things are there in the taskbar. So let's go into file menu. So in file menu there is one important thing, that is examples. So Arduino, there are lots of developers in Arduino forum, and they keep on, like, they continuously keep on building on their libraries and new boards. So they have created this tab where there are examples. So you need not write even a single line of code. They have already given a few basic codes which you can directly test in your Arduino IDE. So if we go into basics and blink, so directly a sketch opens up and all the code is it is already written for you. And this is the code for a LED blinking functionality. So yeah, if you download any library, so that library also has a few examples which are given here. Suppose I had downloaded a library called as Dallas temperature. So a few examples related to Dallas temperature will be given here. So whichever example you want to try, you can try from here. So in file menu, you can, other functionalities are, you can save, you can open a new sketch, you can close a sketch, and these are all other options. Then let's come to edit. So in edit we have like the font size of this text, or the color, or the indentation of this particular sketch can be changed from here. So in edit, these are the only important functionalities. Let's come to sketch. So sketches, like, most important features are present here. First of all, verify and compile. So whenever you write a code, uh, you have to compile that code in your compiler. So now this is one code. So I'll go to sketch and verify and compile. So the compiler's task is basically, your Arduino can only understand in ones and zeros, so is your computer, but you have written a code in English language, right? So it converts this file into ones and zeros, like it converts this file into binary, and then it checks for errors like syntax errors or arithmetic errors. All these errors are checked while compiling the code. If any error occurs, then that error is displayed here. So it is checking for all the tools and libraries that you have. If they are present correctly, it is just tick marking those libraries, and it will, once it is done compiling, it will say here compiled. So let's wait until it gets compiled. So all these are basically in your Arduino IDE. Whenever you download, all the essential files are stored in your folder, and it is just checking that if all those files are present or not. So yeah, as you can see, the whole sketch was of 390 bytes, and still 2039 bytes are remaining, and you will get a message here, done compiling. So whatever code you write, you have to compile. So shortcut, you can go in sketch and compile, or you can directly compile from here. This is a shortcut button given here. The next feature in sketch is upload. So now, once after compiling, you have to upload your code into the Arduino board. So you to upload, you have to connect the Arduino with a USB cable to your laptop or your computer and press on upload button. So, and the shortcut key is given here. So once you upload, before uploading, the compiler compiles the sketch again and then starts uploading. So currently I haven't connected any board, so that's why it will show an error. So whatever error message you get, you can directly copy this error message and directly Google the error, and you will kind of find instantly a Arduino forum link on Google, and all your errors can be easily decoded. So after, these are the two important functionalities. Then there is another functionality here called include library. So once like there are different sensors requires different libraries, different kinds of libraries, right? So these libraries Arduino have uh, created a library manager. So all the important libraries for most important sensors are, you can download it directly from library manager of Arduino. So you just have to go in Sketch, manage libraries, and open the library manager. So this is the library manager. Here all your libraries are there. Whichever library you want, you just have to search it here and press on install. You can also select a version of which library you want and just press on install. So that library will be installed in your Arduino IDE, and you can easily use the functions of those libraries in your Arduino Sketch. So this is how you can include any kind of library. So you have to go in Sketch, manage libraries, and then include library. So let us, there is also one more functionality. Suppose like not all libraries are present in managed libraries. So there are a few libraries which are written by different kinds of users, and they put their libraries on GitHub. So what you can do is you have to download that particular library as a zip format, and then from add zip library you can easily download any library and add it into your Arduino IDE. So just you have to go in Sketch, select a zip file and add it in your library folders. So in Sketch only these things are important. You can verify your code, upload your code, and include a library. So let us start with tools. So in tools, tools is basically like tools bar is usually used for most important in perspective of hardware. So here first of all you can select your board. Like if you will be using Arduino Uno, Nano, Mega, or there are hundreds of options here. So whichever board you have to select the board first. So currently I have connected a Arduino Nano, so I have selected that. So you have to go in tools, select a board. Then there is a processor. So every controller has a processor, and in your datasheet it will be given. So you have to select a bootloader. So here I have selected the old bootloader. Then there is ports. So every laptop or a computer will have multiple ports, and your PC should know that on which port we have to communicate. So you have to go to port, and I have connected my Arduino Nano to port number 5. So I have to select COM5, that is communication port number 5. So in this way my computer will know that in which port I have to communicate to my Arduino Nano. So this is all about, this is the important part in tools. Yeah, there is also one more thing, serial monitor. So whatever communication that we are doing with the Arduino, so Arduino will also send a few sensor readings or actuator readings to the computer. And how will we read those readings on a computer is through a serial monitor. So on communication port 5, now I have connected a random sensor which is showing a value of 0. So if I change the sensor reading, yeah, see, you'll get some kind of values here. So I have connected a force sensor here, which when force is applied, it shows how much amount of force is being applied. So all the sensor readings that are being transmitted to the Nano are being displayed over here. So this is basically a user interface for Arduino IDE, where you will get all the readings from the sensors, and these can be displayed here. Now these are numbers, but what if you want your readings to be in a form of a chart? So what you can do, you can go in tools and open a serial plotter. So this is a serial plotter where you will get a graph output. Yeah, so here you can see that all the readings are being plotted. So as the force have increased, you will get the spikes. See, as I'm changing the readings in the in the sensor, here you will see the plot. And this is, here you can change the baud rate. But whatever baud rate is given in the code, that only you have to select in the communication port. Baud rate is basically number of bits that are being transmitted between the microcontroller and your PC. So I have selected the baud rate of 9600. So 9600 bits of data is transmitted per second. So yeah, so if you have to visualize your data, you can open a serial plotter or a uh, serial plotter or a serial monitor. Serial monitor can be also opened from here. This is a magnifying glass lens icon. If you press here, a serial monitor will be opened and all the readings will be displayed here. So this was the overall, like the overview of these are the things you should know to get started with programming Arduino IDE. And as we have learned the basics of uh, C programming, and we also know about the basics of hardware that Arduino has. So we are all ready to start with the demonstrations. And now Harshal will take over with the Arduino programming basics. Like Arduino C, there is a language called as Arduino C where there are some inbuilt functions like digital write, pin mode. So Harshal will explain about these functions and we will also see some demonstrations.
So hello everyone. So from now we'll learn about the most basic Arduino functions, built-in functions which are very commonly used in all your Arduino projects. So let's start with it. So the first one is pin mode. So what does pin mode do? As we have seen in the basics of Arduino, every Arduino pin can act as an input or an output. So using this pin mode, in this we have two parameters, as you can see in the syntax, pin and the mode. So pin is the pin number and mode will be your input or output, and we have to put that in full capital, and this is set in the setup function. So this is about the first function. So and the next one is digital write. So as we have seen earlier, the pins can either be, there are two kinds of pins, digital and analog. So using digital write, once we have set the pin as an output, first we have to set the pin as an output, that digital pin, using pin mode, and after that we can digital write on that pin and a value. So the pin will be the pin number and value will be either high or low, in full capital, and this is done in the loop function. So this is about digital write, and digital read is exactly opposite of this. First we have to set the pin mode as input, and then we can read digital value, that is only high or low value, using digital read. And after that is analog read and analog write. So using the analog pins, now using digital read, we could only read high or low, that is plus 5 volt or 0 volt. Now using analog read, we can sense or measure the value in between those two. Like for example, let's take the example of accelerometer. Now the output of accelerometer is not going to be like plus high or low. It is going to be some integer or float value which will be between them. So using analog read, we can read these kinds of sensors value, and the syntax is given here: analog read and that pin number. And similarly, using analog write, we can give a PWM wave, which we'll study further. So in digital write we could give only high or low value, and in analog write now we can give a PWM value. That is, it is basically a pulses or rectangular pulses of different widths. So with this we can control the speed of a DC motor or position of a servo motor, like these things. So this is about the Arduino functions which are most commonly used, and there are more three. The next one is pulse-in. Now what pulse-in does is, this is implemented using a digital pin. Now it basically reads a pulse. So for example, now if we have to make the pin's value high first, and then the pulse-in waits for the pin to go from low to high, and then it starts timing. Like it starts a counter. and then it counts the value till when the pin again turns to low. So and then it basically returns that length of that pulse in microseconds. So this syntax of this is given here, pulse in pin comma value. Now this is basically used while interfacing the ultrasonic sensors. Now in ultrasonic sensors we send a high pulse, and then when it detects some object, the pulse returns, and then it again go from high to low. So this timing is measured by using this pulse-in function. And now the next one is delay function. So delay function basically used to produce uh, like it gives a pause to the program. It doesn't do anything. It just gives a pause, and the syntax is given a delay, and the units you have to take care is in milliseconds. So you have to give a delay of 1 second. You have to give a value as 1000 over here. Now the next one is serial dot begin. Now serial Arduino can do serial communication with the computer or laptop which you are using the USB cable. So for that, in the setup function, first we have to use this function, that is serial dot begin. In this we have to give the speed, that is the baud rate. So what is baud rate? Baud rate is basically the rate at which communication, the bits are transferred. So the most commonly used value is 9600. It may vary according to the different microcontrollers, but for Arduino it is 9600 is used commonly. So this is about all the Arduino functions which are commonly used. Now let's start implementing and see the first hello world code. So over here you can go in now. Once you've opened the Arduino IDE, as Moirish has given you introduction to the Arduino IDE, this is the basic blink function. What this program does is it basically blinks the LED, inbuilt LED on the Arduino, on and off, uh, and the timing between high and low pulses 1 second. So let's explain this code quickly. So now in the void setup function, the first function that we studied was pin mode. In this, the first value is the pin number. So here LED built, there is a built-in LED in Arduino. This is referred using this syntax, full capital LED underscore built-in. And then the second parameter is output. So we are going to set that LED as output. Now in the loop function, in the loop function we are going to do digital write LED built in high first, then give a delay of 1 second, then low, again a delay of 1 second. So this is how you blink the LED. So this was the most basic code. Now let's get to the next concept, and we'll see the application of this concept. So this is one of the most important concepts used in microcontroller programming. Now pulse width modulation. So what is pulse width modulation basically? We'll divide into three parts: pulse width and modulation. So pulse is basically the pulses of rectangular waves, periodical rectangular waves, as you can see in this figure. And width is the width of this pulse, that is from this high to low. So this is the width. And after that, modulation. So what is modulation is basically changing that width. So what we do is whenever use any DC motor or a DC servo motor, so all DC equipments will require DC voltage. Now this is not a DC voltage value. This is a periodically changing value. So whenever we give this kind of voltage, changing periodic voltage to these DC equipments, they read the average value of this alternating voltage. So in this, how we can change the average value is by changing the width. As you can see in the first line, the width is very small, so the average value will be 0. And then once we increase the width slowly, the average value will be increasing. So as you can see, it is implemented using analog rate, as we studied earlier. So this is how we implement this is what is pulse width modulation. I will show you an example with which it will get a bit clear. So I have implemented this DC motor control circuit using potentiometer on Proteus software. So I'll just show you the simulation. Now what we'll do is we have given this output to this DC motor, and this is the potentiometer through which we'll control the uh, width of the pulse. So basically speed of the motor is going to be controlled with this potentiometer. So as we vary the potentiometer value from 0 to its max value, the width of the pulse will change. Now I also given this output to digital oscilloscope. So as you can see over here, now the potentiometer value is 0%. Now I'll slowly increase it. So the speed of the motor is also 0. I will increase the width. As you can see over here, the width is little bit increased. So is the DC motor speed. Now I will increase it further. So as you can visualize that as you increase the width of this pulse, the average voltage to this DC motor is increased, and so is the speed. I will go to the max value. So now 12, directly 12 volt is given. So this is how by changing the width of the pulse we can control the DC motor speed. Now another application is to control the uh, position of the servo motor. So now I'll see the implementation of the servo motor with Arduino. So this is the basic code for controlling the changing the position of the servo motor using PWM signal. Now in this, firstly, and I'll explain the code briefly and then show you the implementation. So this is the basic code, and then the first line is including the servo library, so servo.h. So most of the sensors which you are going to interface it with Arduino will be having these built-in libraries. So in next we create a servo object, that is my servo. Now using this object will uh, take all the functions that are there in this servo library, like my servo.write, my servo.attach, all these functions. So and then we define a variable int pos is equal to 0, that is the position. Now in the setup function, what we do is we attach this with what this function does is it describes that pin number 9 is connected to the servo motor pin, digital pin. And then in the void loop we are using for loop, and we are changing the position from 0 to 180 degree with increment of 1. And then we are doing my servo dot write. Now in this my servo dot write, whatever value we give, what this my servo dot write function does is it takes input as the angle value between 0 to 180. So instead of this is a built-in library, so instead of this we can also use analog write to give a PWM value which will corresponding to that particular angle. So now here we have used my servo dot write. So we are changing the value from 0 to 180 first, and then again from 180 to 0. So this is the basic code of the servo motor.
Yeah, so now let's implement this servo motor application on Arduino. So now this is the code that I just explained. Now I've uploaded this on this Arduino board and I've done the connection as shown in the PPT. Now this is the servo motor. Now it will rotate from first from 180 to 0 and then again from 0 to 180. So you can use these servo motors in projects like robotic arm. These are used as joints. So this servo motor is a Tower Pro servo motor. There are other forms too. This can be directly connected to Arduino. You do not need any other motor driver or something. And this is the USB cable which is connected to the laptop. Yeah.
Now the next thing that we'll see is implementation of accelerometer using Arduino. Now what this accelerometer does is it basically senses your direction in all the three axes, that is x, y, and z. And then it can also, with some computation, we can also calculate this roll, yaw, and pitch. So this yaw is basically the rotation about the z-axis, roll is the rotation about x, and y is about, pitch is about the y-axis. So applications of accelerometer includes, like, you can use this in accident detection system in car. Like if you get a certain amount of tilt, it senses that tilt, and then you can set a threshold. Like if the tilt goes above this threshold value, then you can give some signal to the user. And then it is also used in drone controlling of drones. Now as the drone goes to a certain height, because of the wind it can tilt here and there. So in whichever direction it tilts, accelerometer will measure that value, and then opposite to that tilt angle, the motor speed will increase. And then it can be also used in self-balancing board. So in self-balancing board, basically this accelerometer will act as the feedback mechanism, where if the tilt is in backward direction, then it will increase the speed of the DC motor in that way. Now in that you can also use PID functions, even implemented using PID functions also. Now we are going to implement this accelerometer, which is ADXL335. This is the pinout of this accelerometer. So the first pin is VCC, X out, Y out, Z out, ground. So X out, Y out, and Z out will give you the analog voltages which are proportional to the acceleration that is on those respective axes, that is x, y, and z. And VCC will be connected to 5 volt on the Arduino, and the ground of this and the Arduino will be common. So we always have to commonly connect the ground of both the sensor and the Arduino. So this is the connections. These are the connections. First pin A0, we are connecting this XYZ outputs to analog pin A0, A1, A2. Ground is connected to ground of Arduino, and then 5 volts to the VCC. Now we'll see the code of this ADXL, and then we'll see its implementation. So yeah, so in this, first what we do is we define some variables like for x, y, and z axis, and give them values as a0, a1, a2. The x is connected to a0, y to a1, z to a2. And rom and romax, these variables are basically for computation purposes. And then sample size. So what this accelerometer is not very accurate. So what we do is we take the value of the accelerometer for a certain period of time, say not a certain period of time but certain values, say 510 values, and then we take the average of those values. Now in the setup function, as we have seen earlier, serial.begin 9600, this is the baud rate in the setup function. Now the setup function will only be executed once. After that we go to the loop function. So in this, what this read access does is, this is again the sensor again has a library for Arduino. So this read access will read the inputs from this respective axis, that is x, y, and z. So these values that we read are basically voltages. So now we have to convert those. Now we are using map function to convert those voltage values into these acceleration values, that is from minus 3000 to 3000. So how you can get to know about these values is through the data sheet. It will be given in the data sheet. Now these are all the computations, that is dividing by 1000 and all. And then we are using serial.print function to print all these values. So once you have initialized the serial.begin, now and we connect the USB to the Arduino, now we can print it on the serial monitor. You can see it from here. And in the last in this read access function, what we are doing is, as I said earlier, we are taking uh, some amount of values, reading some amount of values, and then taking its average, and this is done using this for loop. And I'll tell you the syntax of this map function also. And this, the first value is the variable which you want to map, that is x raw, that you have read over from here. The next four values are basically the ranges. So first, second, and third value are the actual minimum and maximum voltage that you read, and then last two values are the values in which range in which you have to map those voltages. Now this is the basic code. Now we'll see its implementation.
We implemented this ADXL 335 accelerometer interfaced with Arduino board. So now I'll show you the readings over here. So as I change the position of the accelerometer, so the readings will change over here. And we can also plot this using you can go in tools over here, and then you can open serial plotter. So now it will plot this value of these three XYZ axes. So I'll change the position, so the graph will similarly change. Now with this data you can like do signal processing and stuff. This is how you implement it using Arduino board.
So let us start with the Internet of Things now. So the short form for Internet of Things is IoT. So in this session we'll be looking at what actually IoT is, and what are its few applications, and what are few important technological advancements that are happening in this particular field. So let's get started with the definition of Internet of Things. So if I have to give a brief idea to you, like the name itself suggests that what it means, but to give you a brief definition of what it is, Internet of Things basically is a network of physical objects. Like it is a network of physical objects, like physical things. These things can be your fan, your AC, your water bottle, like anything. So these things are embedded with sensors and some kind of a gateway or a software, and other technologies that are used in these particular things to gather data out of them, and this data reaches some kind of cloud services through internet. So what we are doing, we are trying to collect physical readings from things by using a few sensors, by embedding the few sensors on those things, and gathering data from it, and that data is transferred through internet. So anything can be converted into Internet of Things. So if you have a simple water bottle and you want to track that how much amount of water I am drinking, so you just have to install a maybe a level sensor in that, and you have to install a node MCU so that it can connect to Wi-Fi, and whatever the level is can be level of the water in the bottle is, it can be directly sent to a cloud platform, and from all that data we gather, lot of analytics can be done. So all these from this analytics you can get a good amount of information that how much water you are drinking, and you can create more analysis that how much you should be drinking in summers, in winters. So this is how whole IoT works. So in this image we have any device. So as I just told you that any device can be converted into IoT, anybody. So anybody who has access to that data can create analytics from that particular data anywhere. So if I am sitting here in India and I have some relative in USA, and if I have access to his particular dashboard, then I can check his water bottle status also, like considering the example that I gave. So you can check anywhere your data from anywhere. You need not be at that place where the sensor is located, but you can check the values from anywhere in the world. Then any business. So there are various businesses who are advancing and taking up these new technologies in Industry 4.0, and they are embedding IoT in each and every businesses, because as the technological advancements are going on, the overall cost is also reducing. So it is quite possible for MSMEs, like small scale and medium scale business, to also implement IoT in their own businesses. Then next is any network. So IoT is not just internet, but it is also Bluetooth, LoRa, Zigbee. So all these protocols, any network can be formed, sensor network, wireless sensor networks. So any type of network can be formed, and that can be part of IoT, and anytime. So you can gather data from 24/7, 365 days of years. So there is no time limit. You can gather data at your pace, that whatever pace you decide, you will get data at that pace. So this is the basic overview of Internet of Things, and there are a lot of applications also, and I'll mention a few, like smart homes. So in your home, there are a few home automation companies. What they do is they will connect everything, all your devices to internet, and you can control those devices using Alexa or Google Home. So you can just say, okay Google, turn on lights, then lights will be on. Then you can say, Alexa, turn off the fan, then fan can be off. So these are a few applications in terms of smart home. Then there are Fitbits, devices like Fitbits. So even that is IoT, because they are collecting your health data, like your ECG, your how much you're walking, how much sleep you are getting. All this data is collected by them, and you get analysis on your mobile app, right? So this is another example of IoT. Then there are smart cars. So in smart cars, your vehicles have a lot of sensors embedded in them, and they send data to your like the modern cars have this facility where you can check that how long your car has been traveling, then what is the mileage it is giving. So all these things can be done by using Internet of Things. So these were the few of modern day applications of Internet of Things, and literally anything can be converted into Internet of Things, and we'll learn in further demonstrations that how the whole process works. So let's move on then. So next thing is internet. So to know what actually Internet of Things, first you should have basic understanding that how internet works. So if I have to explain what is internet, then in simple 2 or 3 words I will say that it is a network that connects the world, right? So connects the world in terms of knowledge or information. So it is a network which can travel which can travel information from one place to another using fiber optic cables. So to explain internet with an example, I would like to give you an example of, suppose, YouTube. Like everyone has a one favorite YouTuber, right? Suppose let's take an example of PewDiePie. So PewDiePie is uploading videos from his own country, right? And you are watching that particular video at your home, sitting in India, and just tapping on YouTube, and you can see his video without any problem. And what is making that happen is internet. So how exactly internet works is basically YouTube has its own data centers. So whenever PewDiePie uploads some kind of video, that his video is stored in a data center of YouTube. So YouTube have multiple data centers in USA, Canada, in multiple countries, right? So in one of those data center, his video is stored. Now what there are many companies, like specialist companies, whose only task is to mine optic fiber cables. So what their job is to, they have to mine optic fiber cables from one data center to other, like from one continent to other. So if there is one data center in suppose California and one data center in India, so it is physically connected through optic fiber cable. Like you will say there are oceans, mountains, so it doesn't matter. The company's job is just that they have to mine optic fiber cables. So as you know, optic fiber cables, that means the data is traveling with speed of light. So it reaches you at the speed of light. So whatever video that is present in the data center, the file is converted into a binary file that is in ones and zeros, and that those ones and zeros travel throughout the world from one data center to a data center in India, and from there we have different internet service providers. Like Jio provided free internet to everyone, right? So how was that possible for them? Because 3 years before that, they were mining their own fiber optic cables throughout the country and the world. So they could afford that. They could afford that because they were having their own fiber optic cables. They were basically getting free internet for themselves. They could transfer data from one place to other through their own channels. So that's why they could give free internet to everyone in India. So this is how data travels from one data center to other data center. And internet basically means that whole world is physically connected with fiber optic cables, and data is transferred from one data center to other data center. And yeah, data center is nothing but a huge building where just computers are placed. Like this is a picture of a data center, and this is like 5 to 6 floor building, and there are just computers. Like it has computational power and they can store things in them. So this is basically internet. I will just show you a video where how the whole world was connected with fiber optic cables is seen. So all these cables are mined under sea from one continent to other continent. In fiber optic cables, like whenever there are also teams where so yeah, that was it. That the whole world is basically connected with optic fiber cables, and there are data centers where all your data is stored, and that stored data travels from one place to other through optic fiber cables at a speed of light. And there is this protocol called as Internet Protocol and TCP protocol. So the use of this protocol is basically that whoever is sending a video, it should know that where it has to receive. So there should not be any okay. So how all this data is managed, like how it is traveling from one place to other, there is a protocol written for that, and that protocol is called as the internet protocol. So protocol means just there are set of rules that there'll be data packets and how they will travel from one place to other. So all this is structured in a protocol. There are certain rules for that, and this is how the whole internet works. Now that we know about how internet works, let us try and understand how IoT works. Like let us try to understand the end-to-end architecture of IoT and what are the different components that are present in Internet of Things. And I'll try to explain you this with a simple example. The example that we have considered before, that is a a bottle application. So we have a normal thing. So that our thing that we are considering will be a bottle, and our application is that we have to monitor the water level or any kind of liquid that is present in that bottle. We have to monitor the level of that liquid. Okay, so this is our simple application. So this bottle cannot convert or cannot convey digital data, right? So what we will need is basically a sensor. So we will fix a water level or a fluid level measurement sensor. So there are many sensors available. We can also use an ultrasonic sensor to measure the water level or any kind of capacitive type of sensor. So we have fixed that particular sensor into our thing. So our thing is a bottle, and we have added a sensor to gather data from it. So as you can see, there is this thing. We are gathering data through that thing, and now comes the next step. So next step is gateway. So I'll quickly give you a proper definition of what actually gateway is. So a gateway is basically a piece of networking hardware which is used in telecommunications. So gateway is basically a bridge between your thing and cloud. So you have a sensor placed on your thing, right? But how will it communicate with the cloud, or how will it communicate with the internet? So gateway is that particular hardware device which will connect this particular thing with the internet to send the data to the cloud. So in our case, we have fixed a normal Node MCU. So Node MCU will read about that in later slides. So we have fixed a Node MCU. So it is a microcontroller which has Wi-Fi capabilities. So whatever data you are gathering from this thing can be sent to internet using Node MCU, which will act as our gateway. So next is cloud. So what is cloud? Like, there are a few concepts called as cloud computing, and people usually refer to cloud and what actually cloud is. So let us try to understand that. So I'll give you a definition, that is, the cloud refers to servers that can be accessed over internet. So whatever data you are gathering, it has to be stored somewhere, right? And it can be stored in various data centers. So there are various cloud service providers. One of them is Google Cloud, then there is Azure Cloud by Microsoft, and there is Amazon Web Services. So what they do is they lend you, like, you have your own PC, right? So they have data centers. In their data centers, they have lots of PCs with unlimited RAM and unlimited memory. So what they do is they will rent you those particular computers in their data centers over internet. So you can pay them monthly charges, and they can provide you with their computational power or storage capabilities. So all your data that you are gathering, if you want to perform some kind of analysis or you have to store that particular data, you can store it on cloud. And there are various cloud service providers like AWS, Google Cloud, which will provide you with cloud. So I hope you guys are understanding what actually cloud is. So once we have gathered a lot of data, so we have to extract information out of that data, right? We have to perform a certain mathematical operations, some algorithms, some machine learning techniques to gather information out of it. So what we will do is we'll do data analytics. So in our bottle application, water level application in the bottle, so we have a lot of level data, right? And we will have the timestamp of that data, at what particular time, how much is the level in the bottle. So out of this, we can extract a lot of analytics from this type of data, like how much water first of all you are drinking in a day, at what time of day you need the water most, then in what type of seasons, how much water you are consuming. So all this data is very essential. So with just level data and timestamp, you can get a lot of analytics from that particular data, a lot of information out of that data. And the last component in IoT is user interface. So you are getting a lot of numbers, right? But usually for users, a good pie chart or a good flow chart will give you more insights, is what I believe. So user interface plays a very important role. There are a lot of tools and lot of IoT cloud like IoT platforms which provide good user interface, and we'll be checking out one of the IoT platform, and we will make our own user interface also. So this is the basic user interface. So whatever data we are getting can be uh, visualized in form of charts or tables by using the user interface. So this was the major these were the major components present in the IoT, and this is the flow of how data flows from a basic thing. You connect a sensor, connect it to a gateway so that it has access to internet, store that data in a cloud, perform various analytics on that particular data, and then visualize that data using a user interface. So this is how data flows. So I hope you guys have understood till here. Now let's start with implementation. So we will be taking a demonstration now for a small weather station app, and we'll be sending our room temperature and humidity data to a cloud, and we will be visualizing that data on cloud. So before we go there, there are a couple of important things that you should know before starting IoT. One from hardware perspective and one from software perspective. So let's start with hardware perspective. So as I told you, we'll be using a microcontroller called as the ESP8266, which is also called as NodeMCU. So NodeMCU is basically an open source firmware and development kit which helps you to prototype or build IoT products. So in any project level, or in some cases industrial level also, you use a NodeMCU. So NodeMCU is a basic microcontroller which has Wi-Fi capabilities. So as compared with Arduino, what are the basic differences? That it has only one analog pin. Okay, like there is only A0 present, only one analog pin, and then there are around, I think, 8 to 10 digital pins are available. Yeah, 9 digital pins are available. Then it has a 3.3 volt output, 2 grounds, 1 reset pin. So these overall the size of the board is also small, and then there is a Wi-Fi chip there is present. So you can actually connect your whatever sensors you are connecting, you can actually send that data to internet. You can connect this particular microcontroller with your local Wi-Fi or your mobile hotspot, and you can send that data to the internet. So this is about NodeMCU. Yeah. So now on a software perspective, let us understand the concept of MQTT. So what is MQTT? It is a IoT protocol. So MQTT basically stands for Message Queuing Telemetry Transport. So it is basically a lightweight messaging protocol that was developed by IBM. It uses the pub-sub pattern and translate messages between devices, servers, and applications. So this was the exact definition of what actually MQTT is. So now let us try to like break down these words and try to understand the meaning out of it. So as the full form suggests, message queue telemetry transport, and it is a lightweight protocol. So what it does is basically there is a pub sub pattern, that is publish and subscribe. Like in YouTube we have a creator who creates the videos, and whoever wants to watch those videos will subscribe to his channel. So in MQTT also kind of works on a similar fashion. So where there is a MQTT broker. So MQTT broker is basically the center of every publisher and subscriber. So like even in rental business, like house rental business, there are brokers, right? So if I want to rent a flat, I will go to a broker, and if he has someone who is able to rent a flat, then he will just give that particular flat to me. So this is how in MQTT also work. So there is a particular topic, like here the topic is home and temperature. So all those subscribers who have subscribed to this particular topic will get the data through a broker. Okay, so basically there are three people in my house, and I have a smart automation like smart home system inbuilt in my house. So all the so me and my parents want to know that what is the current temperature of the room. So I will subscribe to this particular topic, that is home and temperature, and there will be a MQTT broker whose only job is to take the data from the publisher and show it to subscribers. So this is how this protocol works, that there is a broker who can handle multiple publishers and can take the data and give it to the subscribers who have subscribed to that particular topic. And and why most of the people choose MQTT is because it is a very lightweight protocol. That means a lot of messages can be sent without having a lot of load on the servers, and it is a very good protocol for machine to machine communication. So that's why in IoT we mostly use MQTT protocol. Now that you have understood the MQTT protocol, we are all ready to set up with our first demonstration of IoT. So we will be building a weather station for our application. So these are the connections. We'll be using a DHT sensor. So DHT11 sensor basically is a humidity and temperature. It gives the humidity and temperature of the room. So we'll be sending the humidity and temperature data to the cloud, and we'll be using NodeMCU as our gateway and ThingsBoard as our cloud platform as well as the visualization platform. So let's start with knowing first of all what actually ThingsBoard is. So ThingsBoard is just a website, and so first of all you have to make an account on thingsboard.io, and it is totally, there are two versions, paid version and free version. So you can make a account on your free version. So ThingsBoard is basically a open source IoT platform, and we can use it for data collection, data processing, data visualization, and various device management. So this is the purpose of ThingsBoard. So whatever data you are gathering from your temperature sensor, that is DHT sensor, you can send that data to ThingsBoard. So there are various libraries of ThingsBoard that are present for Arduino. You can easily use those libraries to program your microcontroller and send the data to ThingsBoard. So let's get a basic overview of what are the features that are present in ThingsBoard. So there is this devices. So before starting, first of all, what you have to do is create a device. So I have gone in devices, then you have to add a device, add new device. Then we are making a weather station. So I'll name my device as a weather station. Then you can give it a label. Then you have to give a data, that is MQTT, because you'll be sending the data through MQTT, right? So you have to select MQTT and you have to add that device. So as you can see, your device has been added here as a weather station. So once you click on this, a new window will pop up and all the details about that device will be given here. So every device will have a proper access token. So like there are multiple devices, right? And you have to send data in ThingsBoard through your microcontroller. So your microcontroller should know that what is the access token. So what you have to do is click here. So your access token will be copied. So just copy this access token. We will need that in the programming part. So let's quickly look into the code, that how is the code for microcontroller. So we have included few libraries. One library is for DHT sensor, other library is for ESP8266, that is your node MCU. One library is for ThingsBoard, and one library is for your MQTT protocol, that is public subscribe client. Then what we have done is we have given our Wi-Fi ID. So Wi-Fi AP is whatever your Wi-Fi name, you have to change it here. And you have to also give the Wi-Fi password. So whatever your password will be, you have to change it here. Then here you have to put the access token. The access token that you copied from your device, you have to paste it right here. So So I will just change this access token to whatever access token is given to me by my device. Right. So I will be sharing this code with you guys. So you have in this code you can use it as it is. Just you have to change the Wi-Fi name to your Wi-Fi name, password, and access token to your access token, whatever you get from your things board. Then I have defined the DHT sensor pins. You have to define the pins, what pin you are going to use from your Node MCU, and I have given the website ID, that what is the server that I am going to use. So this is the Thingsboard server that we will be using. Next in setup we have like DHT library directly gives the function called DHT begin. So our sensor is ready, and then we have written a function called as init Wi-Fi, that is initialize Wi-Fi. So let's look at what is this function. So we have declared it here. So and we have also we also have a library of Wi-Fi. So all the functions that are present in that library we have used those particular functions here. So to initialize Wi-Fi, there is a direct function called as Wi-Fi.begin. So whatever user ID and password that you have given for your Wi-Fi, it uses that particular ID and password and it begins the Wi-Fi. That means your Node MCU will get connected with Wi-Fi. And once it is connected, it will print in serial monitor. Serial monitor is here. Right now I have not connected the board, that's why it will not open. So it will print serial dot print, and that Wi-Fi connected will be if it is connected, then it will print that it is connected. Then we have written another function to reconnect. Suppose in some case your electricity goes off and your Wi-Fi router is goes off, then what is that particular, what is the protocol that your code should have? So it should reconnect, try to reconnect with the Wi-Fi. So it will check for the status, that what is the status of the Wi-Fi. If it is not connected, then it will try to connect again. Okay, so this is the basically, here you are basically trying to give it a extreme case, like if certain things goes wrong, then what your code has to do is given in void reconnect. Also, if it the server is down, if the Thingsboard servers are down, so if it fails to connect with that Thingsboard server, then it will print failed. Then there are then let's come to the main part. So our task is to gather the sensor data, that is get sensor data from the DHT sensor and send it to Thingsboard platform, right? So in this particular function, we have written this function. In this particular function, we are getting humidity and temperature data. So as you can see here, we are storing this value in float. Float means decimal. And we are getting dht.read humidity, dht.read temperature. So we are getting values of humidity and temperature. And then we are sending it to Thingsboard. So tb.sendTelemetry float is an inbuilt function of Thingsboard, and we are sending these two variables to our Thingsboard. Okay, so till now what we understood is we have to change the Wi-Fi password and ID. We have to give the access token which we get from Thingsboard. We have to give the server, and we have to make the connections that were given in the diagram. So this is how you have to connect the DHT sensor to your Node MCU.
These are now I'll explain the connections. So this is the DHT sensor, the Node MCU, and you have used normal B-type cable to connect this Node MCU to the laptop for uploading the code that Mayuresh just explained. So I'll explain the connections quickly. So there are 3 pins: VCC, data, and ground. So VCC pin is connected to 3-volt pin of the Arduino. Ground is given to the ground of Node MCU, sorry, and data pin to the D3 pin of the Node MCU. So these are the connections, and you have connected it to the laptop for uploading the code.
So now we are uploading the code. As you can see, the code is being uploaded into the Node MCU. So once it is fully uploaded, we will open the serial monitor and let us see that what all is getting printed on the serial monitor. Yeah, so as you can see here, it is done uploading. And once we open the serial monitor, the first message we get is that we are connected to Thingsboard. and we have started collecting the temperature data. So as you can see, we are getting the temperature and humidity values, and all this data is like we have connected our things board, we have connected our node MCU to the internet, and all this sensor data is being uploaded to things board. So we had made a, as you guys remember, we have made a device called as the weather station, right? So let's go in things board. Let's go into that weather station app device. Let's go into the latest telemetry. So yeah, now here you can see that there are two parameters, humidity and temperature. So whatever variables that we have declared in the code will be displayed here, and here is the timestamp. So as you can see, the values are changing as as the temperature and the humidity in our room is changing. So yeah, this is how we send the data to our device. Like we register our device in ThingsBoard. We take in details you will find the access token. This access token we have to give in our code. We have to put our Wi-Fi ID and password. And once you upload the code to NodeMCU, all the latest data, that is telemetry data, will be displayed in ThingsBoard. So this is the basic process. Now let us know more about how to visualize the data, how to make a dashboard in ThingsBoard. So now that we have started getting the data from our sensor through our NodeMCU, we are all ready to start visualizing that data. So in ThingsBoard, visualization is also very easy. You just have to go in dashboards option, then a page of dashboards will come. Then here on top right corner, you have to press on add, create a new dashboard. As we have been making a weather station, so let's give the name of weather station dashboard. If you want to give any description, you can give it, and press on add. So as you can see, your new dashboard has been created here. So just tap on it once, then open dashboard. Yeah, so this is your empty dashboard. Okay, so here there will be a pencil icon, that is enter edit mode. So you have to click on this. So here you can start making your own dashboard. So here on taskbar, you will see here an option called as entity aliases. So you have to click on this, then you have to click on add aliases. You have to give it a name. So in MQTT, as we learned, that you need to subscribe to a particular topic, right? So here we are creating a topic. So let's give our topic name as weather topic. Then select the filter type. So we'll select the single entity because we are getting a time series data, right? And we had created a device before this, right? Not a customer or a tenant. So we will select a device here. Then whatever devices that you have in your things board will be all listed here. So what was our device name? It was weather station, right? So we'll select weather station device and we'll press on add. So our topic is now created. We will just save this, and now we are all ready to visualize our data. So in ThingsBoard, there are different kinds of widgets that are available. So we'll click on add new widget. So a list of widgets will be present here. So let's go in analog gauges. So for humidity or like temperature, we have different kinds of gauges available. So let's take this temperature radial gauge. So once you press on it, you have to add a data source. So whatever data we are gathering from that sensor, we have to add it here. So I'll press on add. So now we just created a topic, right? So weather topic will be present here, and it is a time series data. So we had temperature and humidity, right? So let's select on temperature first and press on add button. So whatever live data we were getting there in terms of numbers will be now now we can visualize that data through a dashboard. So whatever the temperature we are changing it from here is being displayed here. So 36 point something is temperature right now. So that is being displayed here. So let's create one more dashboard for the humidity of our room. Let's do something else now. let's take a digital gauge. So in digital gauges we have so many options. So let's take a digital vertical bar. Then add a data source. Same again, we have the same topic. So select that topic, and in here you will select humidity now. So press on humidity and add. So as you can see, you have your digital gauge here. So I'll just maximize this particular thing, and your digital gauge is also here. So as you can see, all the temperature readings we are getting here and humidity readings we are getting here. So these are this is all about gauges. Let us add one more thing in this now. Let us add charts, because if we have to visualize a pie chart or a graph, then it is easy to get a time series chart. So let's add one chart now. Add a data source. Again, same topic, weather, and this time let's add humidity as well as temperature. So we want a chart where both of the readings should be present. So let's click on add. Yeah, so here you can see all the readings are displayed in form of a chart. So you can adjust the size of this particular things, and yeah, so I can just, and remember to apply changes, so that whatever changes that you have made to this particular dashboard will be saved. So you can see that as the time is changing, values are changing with time, all that is displayed here. So as humidity is changing, temperature is changing. So in this way we can visualize our data, and we can make beautiful dashboards with all the digital and analog gauges, charts, and we can do analytics on this particular things. You can also expand this to a full screen view, and whatever values you are getting, you can view them from here. So this was all about Thingsboard, and to conclude, I would like to tell you guys a few things. So you should maintain a few kit, like you should have a hardware kit and a software kit with you. Okay, so in hardware kit, there are a few necessary things that as a engineer you should have. That is a DMM, that is a multimeter. So to measure current, voltage, resistance, you'll need a DMM. Then you should also have a breadboard. So breadboard is basically any circuit that you have to make, you can make it first on breadboard, and then you can go for PCB printing. Then you should have a Arduino Uno. So it is very, like, you can perform multiple projects with Uno and Node MCU. So it is must that you should have a microcontroller. If you have to invest small amount, then go for Node MCU, because it has all the features from Arduino Uno, plus it has Wi-Fi capability. So you can perform IoT projects as well as any other microcontroller projects. Then you should have certain values of capacitors, resistors, and LEDs. And you should have a 5 volt, a 12 volt, and a 9 volt power supply. And in software kit, you should have Arduino IDE installed in your PC, Proteus simulation software. So Proteus is basically a simulation software where all these projects, if you don't have a hardware for this, you can do Proteus simulation. Then for practicing C programming, you should have simple code blocks. And for practicing Python programming, you should have Jupyter notebooks. And to perform a certain signal processing or control system related tasks, you have to do simulation about them. Then you should also have MATLAB for that. So this is all from our side for this session. I hope you have cleared all the basics about microcontroller, Arduino programming, and how the hardware of the Arduino works. And I'm sure you all will try these projects. And I'll be providing a Google Drive link where all the codes and circuit diagrams are present. I'll be also sharing this PPT with you. So this was all from our side. Thank you.